Hey, welcome to the Doc Analyzes Anything, where psychology and science meet, and we attempt to explain any and every human behavior, including slow walking in a crowd of fast walkers.
No.
I mean, I would assume that if one is doing it, it will be an intentional action.
There could be like physical limitations too, like you might not have a choice.
I think this implies you're getting a sick pleasure out of causing everybody else distress by your walking, and I am all for that, 100%, all the way.
Yeah. I do like driving. I do slow down when somebody's tailing me. I slow down because I got nowhere to be. So if I'm a little late, it's fine. I get to watch Mr. Angry Guy behind me freak out a little bit.
I am on both sides of that issue quite often, and so I can't really feel one way or the other about it. But I will say, I do love being in a group with a group of people, like at Dr. Brad's coding ceremony or graduation or whatever it was, and like the whole family's trying to get through this massive cloud. And I'm like, follow me, I'll plow the way, and just like I'm moving grandparents and aunts and uncles, just like splitting the seas. That's pretty entertaining.
He even punched an old woman.
She punched me first. It was okay.
I thought we talked about this.
It's like from Anchorman. Brick killed a guy. Yeah.
You want to lay low for a while.
I just like to just walk through the crowd shaking my fist at people, and so they just get really confused and don't know how to react, and then get out of my way because of that. Like, not like in menacing ways, just like oh, you guys.
Man, I did make my child act like they had to puke one time. This is a true story. I forget where I'm at, but it was a sea of people, and we were just at a standstill, and I was like, she's gonna puke, and I just held her up and like ran, and I mean they cleared very quickly for that reason.
Going off that idea, kind of just, or in a crowded area, one thing that I have had to get used to when I like go somewhere else. So like most notably recently when I was in San Francisco, people in San Francisco don't look around and make eye contact with other people like you do here in the Midwest, I feel like, because all of a sudden that's a quick way to get approached by individuals is by just looking around. You have to look angry.
I said here, though, living in an area that is surrounded by affluent individuals, I find that they don't always make eye contact, because then they can act like they can just run you over in like the grocery store parking lot, like it's your fault if they don't acknowledge that you exist. And so there's that side of it where we are too. But yeah.
I have a bad thing of, because I feel like I'm a nice individual where I will smile at people, and that opens up a whole nother can of worms, because who knows what they think I'm smiling for when I'm looking at them. Maybe it's my bug eyes too.
Yeah, they just are entertained by your goofy face. So let's let everybody know today we're going to be taking on and giving you the definitive answer of the old nature versus nurture debate. So
the definitive answer.
Yeah, if you're getting bored with our banter already, stick around, because we're going to nerd out and have some fun with that. Also, the Facebook page is live, and Kyle, I have to say that tagline "Science and Psychology Walk into a Bar" is gold. That's money. I maybe even we could even put that into the intro, because I like that.
Can we get
very good? Yeah, shirts.
How about shirts with the design that was made with all of us?
Yeah,
I'm into it.
I give Kyle multiple options of the design with the three of us, and me being pulled out of the hat like a rabbit for ta-da, and he chose the one where you look the most creepy and bug-eyed and less like you. So just yeah, let's do that on a shirt. That's perfect.
Okay, for funny though, because was I included in the one with him pulling you out of a hat?
Yeah, you're the hunchback assistant.
Oh, that's that one. Okay.
Yeah, except I had one version that like clearly looked kind of like your face with a hunchback, and he's like, no, this guy looks way creepier. We're gonna use that face instead. So
okay.
Yeah. It wasn't intentional. I think I just grabbed the first one I saw. However, there might have been some some biases.
Some drinking involved.
This one's clearly brown.
to our 5 followers, there may be shirts coming soon.
I do have to say that I think Kyle just found the one where the magician, which is him pulling me out of the hat, he thought looked the best. That's the one he went with for 100%.
I would love to be a magician and vicariously live through the magicians I see on TV. So
I would love to be pulled out of a hat. So there we go.
let's make it happen. I mean, no time like now.
All right. Let's kind of get started here, although we have some serious discussions to have real quick first. But I'm your host, Dr. Steven Sparks. You all know my co-host, Kyle Sturry, and back with us once again, maybe for good, we'll see, is Dr. Bradley Meow Meow Clements here, who is obviously skating on thin ice for ditching us last week because he thought he had more important things to do. And
what the hell, Brad?
What was I doing?
It doesn't matter. The fact is, what if the world decides they like Chad better? What are you going to do? I mean, maybe your grandma and your mom listen to the show. What if they decide like Chad better? And now not only you're out of the podcast, but you're out of the family and you have nowhere to go and nothing to do because you had to go gallivanting the back roads of Charlevoix County having fun instead of taking your responsibilities seriously. Kids these days, damn it, just don't think of the consequences is really what we're getting at here.
And this is why we started
game. If Chad was better than me and people like him in this role more than me, you know what? He can have it. He earned it.
We could never tell him.
He'd get called up to the league.
We could never tell him though because he would be insufferable. So we can't actually go forward with that. But
well, let's start the poll now. Brad or Chad, folks. You
Facebook poll.
Us. We're at the whim of the poll.
Yeah,
you have the 2 options, but then you have to have the option of neither in there.
Of who?
What?
Neither. Like, we're both terrible.
I was going to say we could do both, but then like there would just be half as much time for either of you to say anything. So that would be
Chad's like half a man, so it works.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So the line's being drawn. There you go.
Yeah, I don't know. Are we? I hope you're just talking about him being short, but we're not even going to go any farther into that.
Obviously, Chad, if you hear this, that was a slight dig at your height.
That could have been taken a lot of offensive ways, is what I'm getting at. So I'm glad you clarified that you're just hating on short people. But I do think we do have the possibility of having some random shows where you're both there, because I had some ideas of like, we'll have people write in weird small things that like you can't really take a whole episode to analyze. Like, all right, you pull up to a party or something and you're like 5 minutes early. You don't want to be the first one there. Do you drive around the block? If you drive around the block too many times, it starts getting creepy. What is the acceptable time to show up? Like, what point do you say, no, I'm going to go hide in the store so nobody can see me being a creep outside? Like those little things that differ from person to person, I think would be fun to have like a larger group discussion. But we need like a whole bunch of those to make a full hour-ish out of it. So have some people write in some interesting things there, and then we can see maybe having an extra person to put in their 2 cents on that stuff would be a fun one.
When are we having your kids be guest stars?
Well, one of them barely talks at all, and so he would just be headbutting me probably the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lincoln would just be like, see it. Momo, where are you?
It might make for a good discussion. Maybe better than what we can
probably
whip up.
Jameson would be perseverating on how to get to Kyle's house. What road do you take? And then which way do you go? And then which way do you go? Like the guy could tell you turn by turn directions from like places that are 3-4 hours away that he's been to before because he finds it so interesting knowing where people live and what roads they're on. So that would be a different podcast, I think. But nonetheless, they can join if they want.
Podcast of those 2.
Yeah.
Just one where I just explain how to get to my house from various locations.
And then strangers start showing up to your house from various locations.
True. It's true.
All right. We ready to really nerd out here, get some deep into some science?
Yes,
Let's
sir.
do it.
I have to apologize to anybody that prefers us talking about just the weird, cultural or like human in existence type things like cults, because those are fun too. But like really nerding out on some of these more conceptual things, I think I get a little more excited for it. And you can tell by the excitement in my voice, this is as excited as I get ever. I might get angry, but I don't get excited. So
Actually, that is true. Like thinking about and all the time that I've known you, I have never heard you get that like giddy excitement voice.
no, it's because you just don't do it for me, man. So
All right, bring Chad back.
so nature versus nurture, the age-old debate, which actually is nowhere near the age-old debate that society seems to think it is nowadays. I don't think there's very many people at all that truly believe anything is all nature, all nurture. But where do those lines, occur? Where does one end and one to begin, and how do they interact with some of the things that society sees on a daily basis? And we seem to just attribute, oh, well, that's genetics, and like, is it really? Is it partially genetics? What's going on there? And so we're going to give you a whole bunch of non-answers and what it isn't, and then leave you with the, well, maybe it could be these things, but who knows? Because there's no answer.
That's leaving on a little cliffhanger.
Yeah, but it's because we don't have the answers, not because we're coming back next week to give them to you. So
okay. That's okay.
Yeah. Also, but science doesn't have all those answers. They just know what they can collect data on and what they can see. Not you can't take too big of a step and come to firm conclusions that may not be correct. So
right.
Also need to apologize for everybody. Middle of a heat wave, and the power around here seems to be struggling because the lights keep dimming and getting brighter, and so it looks like I'm at a bit of a rave, but it's not that much fun over here. So
you do kind of have your DJ look going on right now.
Yeah, what was it? What did we say? Like go like this? That's
well,
the
yeah,
look?
you gotta hear like the sound. You gotta hear the mains as well as your mix.
I knew a guy, nice guy. I liked the guy, and he could beatbox like perfectly. Like it sounded like you had the machines going and everything, and you see how little I know that, like, I don't even know what the DJ equipment is called except like the turntables or whatever, but sounded great. And so you'd go to a party, someone would say like, oh, hey man, let's hear it. And he'd start going, and it would be worked really well for a couple of minutes, and then he'd get a few drinks with them and like just go up to groups doing it, and you're like, all right, starting to get a little bit much. And then like after a while you're like, dude, you gotta stop. This can't go on.
One trick pony.
yeah. So so in general, like there was this time where it was believed that like, hey, we're just find the gene that causes this thing, we can mess with it, alter it, and fix that issue. Like here's the gene that causes anxiety, we'll just turn that off, and you won't have anxiety anymore, which would probably be horrible because we never had the motivation to actually do anything to survive. But that's again another episode. No one likes being anxious. It's just kind of one of those things that at a certain level is necessary.
Healthy dose.
Yeah, but it has been found to be a much more complex thing. Like you find correlation, but not necessarily proof of causation, and a lot of sometimes tens, if not hundreds, of genes being involved in single processes that, again, you can just find that there's a relationship, but not know necessarily what if it's a causal relationship or what's going on. And it's real similar to like neuroscience, and it's another thing that often gets brought up in our work is like, all right, well, isn't it just the brain? There's this belief that at some point you can just find, hey, this neurological connection is related to this behavior, will change or alter or mess with these, and poof, all of a sudden, no more attacking people or something like that. Well, all right, I guess that's not the best example because there is the history of people getting lobotomies, but there's a lot more damage being done than just not hitting people anymore. So it was the idea that you could manipulate and change behavior just by addressing these connections. But this is a episode I'm sure we'll do in the future, because there's been some cool studies on the inner overlap between behavioral science and neurology in terms of teaching people to use robotic arms and exoskeletons. And I really think one science can't occur without the other. You're going to have to find the definitive answers of where those overlaps are, but there's tons of neurons involved in almost every process. And if there's damage to certain neurons, you know, that neuroplasticity allows us to relearn skills that might be lost. And so it's just the idea that one gene or one neuron is responsible for a single response or a single behavior has just been found to be extreme oversimplification of these processes. And so we're going to get into, I think first we should probably decide what is nature, what is nurture when we're talking along those lines, and then get into some of the examples that we may see in the general culture, and how some of those analyses may fall short or are just not as understood as we'd like them to be based on the way we humans talk about things in general. So any thoughts before we get started?
No, I'm ready to dive in.
All right. So we'll get to the argument. What is nature versus nurture in general? What do you guys think of when you think of nature versus nurture? Is it just genes versus non-genes, or is it anything physically biological you're born with versus societal, like taught behavior? You know, what is your understanding of it?
If it's okay if I speak first, I mean, my nature versus nurture.
Thanks for asking permission. Yes, you are allowed to talk.
Thank you. Well, because I didn't want to like jump the gun. If Kyle, like, he's definitely more into, like, he's more knowledgeable about this field, so technically he'd probably be more qualified. But actually,
all accurate, very accurate.
I do have a minor in neurology. But hey, it's no whatever you have.
Yeah, no, I'm just laughing. Like, Kyle probably knows this better than me, but I did actually study it for a while.
Well, minimally.
Quickly Googling what is neurology.
No, so like my idea of like nature versus nurture is like nature is your baseline. It's where you start, is what I think. Like, you have a genetic component of everything that is going to set you up for how you're gonna just like everything in the world, and how like certain stimuli will cause like those chain reactions that produce different or the release of certain molecules within your head primarily, I'll say, to cause reactions to certain things. That I do believe in, but everything is malleable in this world, and so that's where nurture then comes into play a role, so then it'll be like fine-tuned whatever fits that individual best. But I think you do definitely start with like a baseline.
Okay, Brad, that wasn't bad. No, I don't know what else to add to that. Just the nature kind of setting the stage, setting the like predispositions, starting the baseline, then nurture kind of driving the performance, if you will, like kind of the context that you enter into. It can be as much responsible for, you know, why you do what you do as the context, that not as responsible, but the interaction of the context that you enter yourself into, combined with the makeup of who you are and what has made you. That's the nature versus nurture. And I think what the argument is like a false one, because there can't really be one without the other. And so like the dichotomy is like, it's not one or the other. There's got to be like a hand holding of the two at some line.
Yeah.
How very unwilling to take a hard stance of both of you. Very superficial. Right. Thank you.
Give us a situation, and I feel like
we'll get to that.
There have been times in history that people have taken hard stances on either, and it's not found to be anything empirical or worth talking about. I think.
You want to know who deals in absolutes? The Sith.
I'm just giving you a hard time, because what I'm getting at, is on a societal level, people are always saying, "Oh, that guy's, so smart, or that lady's so smart. It's their genes. They've got good genes." You're giving credit to the genes oftentimes. And then from a behavioral standpoint, we're looking at, okay, anything muscular, glandular, or neuroelectrical that is activity is behavior. You know, I mean, we can cause a person to salivate by manipulating the environment around them. And I know people hate the word manipulate, but just changing and altering the environment around them. You can cause a firing of a neurological activity or brain activity by doing things around a person. And so just being neurological, I would separate completely from being genetic necessarily, because sure, the genes may make up how that neurological activity occurs in general, but it may not affect what is occurring due to your current situation. And so let's get into it a little more. Like, all right, nature side is obviously genetics. The things that are caused by your genes without social input is kind of where I think the argument goes. And then for the nurture side is like, how much of it is your life experiences and your upbringing and the things you've been taught that account for your behavior. So is it, nope, you were born with it, or is it Maybelline? You know what I mean? And we should probably get some money for saying that out loud. I don't know. But what we've learned more recently, we brought it up, I think, in our first episode, is that there's also the epigenetics. And that's where I think there's really confusion of what do those count as, because they are part of your genes, but the environment around you is activating or deactivating some genes depending on the situation, at which point there is no clear argument whether it's nature or nurture. And so I don't think we're going to ever have a clear answer on this one, because you can't always determine what is a genetic process and what is a behavioral or socially mediated process. And now we have this middle ground that's like, hey, it's both, who knows? You know what I mean? So we can talk about where that falls in here in some of our examples, but you asked for an example. So let's throw out there, let's go right into the line of fire some hot button topics that we see in today's society quite a bit. How are they determining what is genetic or not? It's usually with these twin studies. You know what I mean? They're using some other family overlap to see, okay, what genetic similarities are between one group of people versus another. What and we're psychologists or in the field of psychology, so we'll say what psychological conditions now are attributed to this group of people that have this genetic component versus this other group that doesn't have these, that has different genetic components, and usually are using the monozygotic and dizygotic twin studies to differentiate between the two. So monozygotic, identical twins. We'll make it easy on everybody because, first of all, it's hard to say repeatedly, and also I wouldn't expect everyone to remember those words and be like, wait, which one's which as we're going forward. But identical twins at the moment of conception, single egg, single sperm, and then over the first few days, that cell splits and it becomes two zygotes, or eventually two fetuses, and now you have the identical twins at that moment of conception, identical genetic material. With your digyzotic or the fraternal non-identical twins, they have one sperm, one egg each, and so you're looking at like a 50-50 split, whether or not it's kind of like a chance relation, whether or not their genes will match up specifically one gene to the next from one to the other. And so really there's no difference between the likelihood of shared genes between the non-identical twins or the fraternal twins as there are any other siblings. So in theory, this should tell you, okay, you have identical twins. Let's say there's a 85% chance of them both having a certain condition. Now, the non-identical twins, there's like a 30% chance, and then other siblings, there's like a 15% chance, and then cousins, there's like a 5% chance. And then like the farther you get where the genes are less similar, the more differences you see in those diagnoses, the fewer patterns you see. And so this is used as evidence to suggest, look, it's got to be genes, it's got to be genetic that's causing a lot of these things, because how else would you explain the closer your genes are being similar, the more likely you are to have the same diagnosis? There are some fundamental issues with that as well, though, because that gradient effect actually suggests that there might actually be let's see, how do I best say this? There are holes in that theory because the gradient effect occurs when it maybe shouldn't. So if you have non-identical twins have the same likelihood of genetic makeup to be the same as you have with non-twin siblings, yet you have a higher incident rate for those twins, then something going on in the environment would suggest potentially that that's why there's a higher incident rate. Also, you have these identical twins who at that very moment of conception have identical genetics, but the incident rate isn't 100%. You say, like, okay, 85% likely to have the same diagnosis, but if they have identical genes at that moment when they are conceived, you would think if it was purely genetic, it would be 100% or none. You know, I mean, it'd be every child has this diagnosis or not if they are identical twins. So we'll get into like the realm of autism here because there's a lot of data available for us to use here. We're not going to talk about the behavioral side of autism. That may be something we get into later, but just the genetic analysis of whether or not that could be a cause of autism. And Grace Sinai Hospital shared a study that strongly associated between 70 and 250 different genes that may be, you know, part of what causes autism, according to the scientists that published that study. And another study found that if one identical twin has autism, the other is 70 to 90% more like, or it has a 70 to 90% chance of also having that diagnosis in the future, compared to 10% chance for the fraternal or non-identical twins. And so that would suggest, listen, there likely has to be a genetic component because their genes are identical versus non-identical. But how do you account for that 30 to 10% who are identical twins but don't both have the same diagnosis, don't both have a diagnosis of autism? It, again, would seem like they would have to be all or nothing. And again, the answer comes into some of those other pieces as well. Like at that moment of conception, sure, they're identical, but it could be just days or hours between before other environmental things start playing a role, even in utero. One twin gets a little bit more nutrients than the other, or one for some reason is more affected by an infection mom gets than the other does. And their genes can change. It could be an epigenetic response. And now one twin is not genetically identical to the other. And so now we're getting back into the argument. Is that a nature? Is that a nurture effect? You know what I mean?
So I want to recap that study real quick just so I understand. You said identical twins were 70, if one had a diagnosis of autism, there's a 70 to 90% likelihood chance that the other identical twin would also have that diagnosis?
Correct.
Okay.
And then for the fraternal or non-identical, it was only a 10% chance that the other twin would also have it.
Okay. So suggesting a likely nature or genetic, something genetically predispositioning someone to that diagnosis.
At least likely. And I think that we'll
Right.
use another example. Every year I see these numbers, and it's meant kind of as a fun or silly exercise about how correlation does not mean causation. But every year the number of ice cream sales increases along with the number of murders, almost identically. Like the trends in murders and the trends in ice cream sales are completely the same, going up and down depending on environmental factors. And so if you didn't know better, you could argue, hey, ice cream causes murder, or for some reason, when people kill someone, they get a hankering for ice cream afterwards. It's weird. But what we really know is they're both attributed to increases in temperature. When the weather's nice, more people are out, there's more interactions, and the murder rate goes up. And when it's nicer out, warmer out, people want ice cream more often.
Thankfully, though, we live in a society where we don't have to worry about people believing correlation causation.
I
don't see it in the news or anything.
I think
Ever.
100% it is mint chocolate chip that causes murder. 100%. It's all you psychopaths
behind that one.
Because you're a psychopath if you like mint chocolate chip.
Come on now. It's not bad.
It is probably my least favorite ice cream.
Yeah, says the guy that if I throw a microfiber towel at you, you're gonna.
Oh, you don't like microfiber towels?
Oh, how dare you just throw out my kryptonite? It's not
Topic change.
Not microfiber towels specifically, but soft things. And so that feel of your skin that can catch on the edge of that really fine fiber, or what's worse is my wife used to chase me around with Q-tips because I hate cotton balls. Like the feeling of a cotton ball just gives me chills like fingernails on the chalkboard. Some of the times you walk into a nice soft snow, chills right up the spine. I don't like a soft blanket.
Do you clean your ears with Q-tips?
I can do it as long as they're wet. But I know you're not supposed to, but yes, I do. But I have to get it wet first.
That's wild of you.
What's your earliest moment then that you can think of that you had this idea, this feeling that I do not like this?
I never remember not having that feeling.
As far as I know, would suggest a genetic predisposition to aversiveness toward soft
I
things,
can
right?
almost guarantee that there was a pairing, probably being a little baby getting a shot and they're using the cotton ball, out of the jar on the thing or something like that. I bet there was an early pairing that now makes it extremely aversive to me. But yeah, there's nothing worse than soft things. Like overly soft blanket. No, give me something like a t-shirt material or
bed of straw.
I'm fine with it. But just inside of a fresh new sweatshirt, oh, it's horrible. I hate having to put it on.
Wow. Yeah. Must be why you smell so bad all the time.
I smell great because I never sweat because I'm always cold because I will not wear the sweat. No.
Dude, that is a lie. I did yard work with you last week. And I look at this guy and go, Steve, when did you get a pool?
My sister throws up or passes out or something whenever she touches cardboard. Like the feeling of cardboard on her hands. She's like, nope, hits the ground.
I don't like the feel of cardboard, but I'm fine with it. Brad here refuses to touch the dirt with his bare hands because he's so worried about them getting dry as a reaction. So we're just gonna have a fight. Cotton balls versus dirt. We'll see who wins.
I think the feeling of dry dirt not necessarily sand, but dry dirt on your hands, I guarantee you that's gonna have more. People do not like that feeling.
Another poll, and we can do it. But that's not the point. The point is that you would give up in the fight before I would, because I've learned to deal with having to touch soft things in the world much more than you've had to deal with putting your hands in dirt.
No, I played baseball, and my hands would get covered in dirt all the time, and then I would literally lick my hand to get it off.
So, yeah, back to what we were talking about. Yeah, the ice cream and murder rate just kind of shows that there's often missing links that explain these relationships that are missing, and most likely when we're talking about something as complex as autism, there's several missing links, and that's why they found up to 200 and whatever genes it is that could be attributable.
Yes,
they could
attributable.
I think you gotta do the high in the middle there. Yeah, to the diagnosis. And so if we look at it just from being now I threw myself off so hard with that attributable like that. That was a rough one.
I'll take it out.
Attributable. So even if there isn't a genetic component, or if there is a genetic component, regardless, you're going to likely have identical twins having much more similar experiences than their non-identical siblings or siblings who aren't twins at all. And so you think about society as a whole based on the way you look, the family you come from, the time in which you were raised, 1 year versus the next, that sort of thing. It's very likely that your experiences are going to be very similar, especially as close as many identical twins are reported as being, where in some cases they're even creating their own language and coming up and seemingly finish their own thoughts, even though I think we know that that's probably just because they're so used to being on the same wavelength. That it very well could be that is part of why we see such higher incident rates in identical twins versus non-identical twins, or with the non-identical twins compared to their other siblings, because they're still going to be much more similar based on their temporal relation, being the same age at the same time and the same experience at the same time. And those might be things in the environment, like, okay, we know the damage that lead paint chips can do. And so if, two twin children were raised in a house that both, had lead paint, and then their older sibling wasn't, even though they're genetically likely the same, have the same similarities, there's still that 50-50 chance of having matching DNA for any particular sequence. Their experiences could be that much different that it could cause an epigenetic or neurological change that may or may not be attributable to their original genetic makeup. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah, like would genetic makeup like even influence? Well, I know it does, but like genetic makeup can influence like the sensitivity to variables in the environment too. So like two people, side by side, one thing in the environment causes one to, get sick or have, some event happen, but not the other person. That can be equally due to that person's genetics, but also spurred on by the event in the environment.
yeah, and even then it gets hard to know for sure to what extent some of
You didn't look
those.
like you liked that comment.
No, I liked it. What it made me want to do is jump ahead to where I was going to talk about something in a bit, and I had to constrain myself, prevent myself from getting too far ahead, because like the next topic, the next topic is where I was going to talk a little bit more about some of those events and how they may be similar or different. But very much so, I think one of the main takeaways of this whole conversation is that genes have a lot more to do with how we interpret and interact with our environment than the behaviors of the individual themselves. And we'll talk about that more later, but how well you see, what you hear, smell, I mean, your senses are very much tied to your genetics, much more than whether you like touching cotton balls or not. And if you like touching cotton balls, there's obviously something wrong. But I think even more than these identical twin studies that everybody tends to key in on, showing like, listen, there's got to be a higher, at least correlation, if not causation here. I find those non-identical twin studies versus the siblings even more interesting, because one study here, I think I had it written down, a 2013 article by Bohm et al. Was written in the journal Medical Hypotheses, or Med Hypotheses. Fraternal twins are twice as likely to have have an autism diagnosis compared to their non-twin siblings, and so their chances of being genetically similar are the same. It's exactly the same, yet they're twice as likely. And so, to me, that suggests there has to be at least another component, whether it is chemical, epigenetic, or social cultural, playing a role that makes those twins more likely to both have that diagnosis. And so I haven't heard many people talk about that, but like I was thinking about that, reading, I'm like, that seems to be where we should be going next with this, to really determine if we can say we have this correlation between genes and some of these diagnoses or not. Is, all right, why would it be, unless it is due to environmental variables, why would there be that double the chance like that? Not again, you couldn't say whether it was social or not, because it could be an epigenetic change. It just, and I don't know if we went into enough detail on like that doesn't mean that there's an actual change in the genes necessarily, but genes that are dormant may become active depending on environmental stimuli. And so that's why we're differentiating between an actual genetic change, where I've at least read that some environmental factors like carcinogens can actually change your genes.
Right.
In this fact, we're actually talking about just activation or deactivation of those genes being working at that moment. And so, again, I'm almost on the fence of whether or not we would call that a nature versus nurture type effect, because it's both, really.
I mean, it gets to the point where, I mean, truly what you're describing with that is a combination of the two, because instead of like how I think initially me and Kyle were talking about the nature component of it, is where it's like after birth, where experiences and exposure to certain things will alter how you react to situations and change how even your body physiologically reacts, where you're describing something that is like the baseline that we described, but then you're taking things, chemicals, whatever it may be, where you're causing mutations within genes, which if you study genetics at all, like is a very common thing that, I mean, you have a developing body or developing like thing and like
organism.
Yeah. Thing.
It's a scientific term.
Hey man, I'm the layperson here. And if you have like exposure to different things, you're gonna have those mutations, even down to like a like developmental standpoint, that will then set your baseline at something different than what it was supposed to be. So that's where you're getting into a mix of combining nature and nurture into one.
Yeah, and that's what I said at the beginning too, is there is no way it's ever going to be definitive one versus the other. But that's also, you could see why when you guys gave your answers, I just shook my head at you slowly, is because you guys weren't taking the same place I wanted to go, and I was disapproving of that. But
we read ahead, man.
Yeah.
Because did you want us to take a hard stance on one or the other?
I was hoping you would, just so I could tear you down, but no, I didn't.
I mean, I hate to say it, but like Kyle and I are both like reasonably educated, that, and I feel like open-minded enough that we're not gonna be a Sith. We're not gonna deal in absolutes.
You didn't take the bait. You saw what was coming and knew what was going to happen, and that I was just going to tear you apart. And so I was more disappointed that I didn't catch you than I was disappointed in your answer. We'll put it that way, okay? So going back to the idea that like we have 70 to 230 different genes that have to be working in accordance in one way or another for this potentially to explain occurrences of autism. I think we also need to discuss the fact, and just briefly, we're not going to get into potential causes of autism beyond the like in the context of genetics, but that the symptoms that make up this disorder are of social nature. And so that does not mean that they're social causes, but they are behaviors that are either underdeveloped or missing from the repertoire, or that are occurring in the repertoire that would not be expected to be seen in the rest of society, that are learned through interaction with society. And so there's always that potential that there are, social causes that have very little to do with genetics, but because there's likely in some way some form, some overlap between the two. So I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is RFK Jr. is full of shit when he says he's going to find the cause of autism in a few
next
weeks
month,
here.
man.
Yeah.
Next month.
We're a few weeks away from him figuring out how
Solving.
all this stuff works.
Do they even have like a countdown clock, like down to the seconds?
It's probably when he's just going to release the nukes, so he doesn't have to answer for not knowing what he's talking about.
It's probably when he's just going to hit ChatGPT and ask it to do more stuff for him.
He's going to find like one chemical he doesn't like, hey, it's red food dye. That's it. We're good
Yeah.
now. Just get rid of that red food dye. No more red pop here in Michigan for our Fago fans.
Can't do that. Yeah, I was about to say Fago Red Pop. We cannot get rid of it. I haven't had it in years, but I'm running to the store after this podcast. I'm gonna get one.
And then you're gonna sneeze and think you're bleeding to death or something. But so another hot topic that often tends to be attributed to genetics is sexuality. And again, we're not getting into sexuality itself in this podcast. I think at some point it would be a good analysis to do, but like maybe 5 years from now when we're actually good at doing this podcast thing and we can say things in a way that don't upset people, because we really just want to share the science of things and not just go around pissing people off, even though I'm sure we're doing both. But there's this general misunderstanding in our society that everything seems to need to be either choice or genetics. You know what I mean? And there's a logical fallacy called false dichotomy, that is the idea like, hey, I give you these two choices, and whatever you choose isn't a good choice, and so now you're basically putting yourself in a hole in this argument. And I think that's what's going on is you can't say with 100% certainty what genes would play a role necessarily in something like sexuality, but you can say that, you know, certainly it's not a choice. We're not going to say that anybody's walking around saying, you know what, this is how I want to be. It is truly how they feel. And so there might be genetic components to it. Same way, you know, some of the same issues with the genetic analysis, but there's an article by Heyman and Fortune published in 2023 that said identical twins have 65.7% chance of sharing non-heterosexuality compared to 30% for fraternal twins. And again, on the surface, seems genetic, but due to everything being identical at the moment of conception, we know that it should be much higher than that 65.7% if genes alone, just your genetic material at the moment you're conceived, were causing any of these things. And I think this, in our analysis in the future, will go much more into the subtleties of shaping in society. You know, you have to take into account two identical twins walking down the street, looking the same, having a lot of the same mannerisms, being grown up in the exact same situation, are going to have many, if not most, of the same life experiences. But you never know what that smile from a stranger that one can see because of their perspective walking next to the other and the other can't. Something that small can have such a profound effect on the rest of someone's life, and you just wouldn't necessarily even think back and remember it. You know, as a society, we all talk about the big occurrences and the big traumas and those effects we have on they have on our lives, but as a whole, what makes us us, those small occurrences that you don't even remember the next day or 10 minutes later, probably play an even bigger role in determining who we are as people.
Because there's more of them. There's more little moments than big moments.
And they're happening
subtle.
Constantly. And sure, the individual impact of each moment may be small, but cumulatively together, they're huge. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so again, getting back to the non-twin siblings versus the non-identical twins, like, just think about the difference between growing up or being born in 2018 versus 2022 and how much different the world is. You'd be living under completely different conditions if you were even alive just a couple years before the pandemic hit versus being born and only living in a post-pandemic world. And I'm sure that we'll find that the behavior of and the socially selected behavior of, so I don't want to make it sound like it's a choice, because again, we're saying it's not, but the socially selected behavior of those individuals that came after are going to be very different than their siblings who were alive before this all happened. And so you can't say one thing or the other, but we can say that there's no reason to believe that it truly is a choice. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'll leave everybody else with a cliffhanger about the sexuality thing because we will touch on it later. But scientifically speaking, bisexuality or really multisexuality would probably be what's most likely to be explained and expected in humans based on the science of human behavior in general. It is
outside of like a social vacuum.
yeah, if you didn't have the social norms that have guided us to most people being heterosexual in nature, basically based on the science of reinforcement, anywhere you can get it would be just fine. And so it is more interesting to see that we are primarily heterosexual society than it is to think about where these people who are considered outliers stand, because scientifically they make more sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I know we're running out of time, so I'll say like what really brought up a lot of this thinking and this for me in general, these ideas and studying into the genetic side. Of course, everybody knows going through school there's the nature versus nurture debate, but I remember sitting there one day, maybe I've mentioned this before, watching the news, and pops up on the news, they found the gene that causes stuttering. And I'm making up this number, I don't remember, I couldn't find it, but like 65% of people who stutter share this gene. And I'm like, I can see most people in society thinking, oh, yep, nope, they found it, that's cool, they can cure it now, that's great. And I'm thinking like, all right, what about the other 35%? That, like, how do they fit in? And what about the people that have this one gene malformality but don't stutter? Like, you're not explaining how any of this works.
Right.
I'm sure the authors were just saying like, hey, we found this cool correlation, we're going to study it further. And then the media just grabbed it and like, nope, they found it, it's over, we're all good here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I stuttered as a kid. I wonder what my genes look like.
Blue.
Very blue.
The amount of times that genes was said throughout this talk, and no one, it was low hanging fruit. I had to grab it.
Please don't grab anyone's low hanging fruit.
And then
I'm here for it. I like
it. The world, the sun setting and then rising the next day.
Yeah, I also wouldn't feel good about ending this without mentioning the idea of like genes and intelligence too, because everybody credits their genes with their level of intelligence, and unless your genetic makeup causes some sort of malformality that you're unable to learn the same way as your average peers, like we really are all a blank slate. And so it bothers me, not necessarily people trying to feel special about thinking they're intelligent, but the idea that others may not be because of the genetic makeup, when under the right circumstances and the right motivation, there's nothing that sets us apart from anybody else in any of these things.
Well, and IQ is such a funny, we need to do an episode on IQ, I think, but it's such a funny measurement. Like, case in point, I know for a fact I would outscore many of my good old boy relatives out on the boonies of Indiana living right now on an IQ test. But if natural disaster comes and we're reverted back to pioneer time, survive on your own, I'm toast and they're going to be just fine. So who's really more intelligent in that scenario?
It really is an arbitrary number kind of given to a certain set of skills and values that aren't always that helpful to the individual, but sure makes you feel better about it. And I've almost thought about we could do like one where we each take IQ test, then study and see if we can improve it, because it's supposed to be impossible to improve your score by studying. It's supposed to just be like you're this smart, and I know that that's bunk, but I think we get more tied up in these scores themselves than the improvement, like the whole purpose of that exercise would be. So maybe we'll just do it to Brad so we can judge him and then move forward.
Or we could all do the mocha and compare how we did compared to a certain world leader.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Trump during his first presidency bragging about how intelligent he was in his IQ test, and then when they showed what it was really just the test that they give people to look for dementia. And so we won't make any other judgments on it other than we are bragging about maybe not having dementia.
predisposition to dementia.
Yeah. But nonetheless, let's
next time let's actually do that what's the test for the behavioral stuff, like introverted versus extroverted thing?
Ooh.
So you do it every time you do like a grad program. It's like an icebreaker.
Myers-Briggs.
if you want to do some of the personality test stuff, we will have a whole episode on that, and I will basically explain how it's nothing but circular reasoning and having type A personality, because this test told you doesn't mean
let's each take it, because I don't buy into it fully. And then it'd be a great spot to talk about, and then our viewers will know a little bit more about us,
how smart we are,
and how type A angry bully I am. So I wanted to just share, I think B.F. Skinner wrote about this briefly, in Beyond Freedom and Dignity, and the idea that basically all of the things being the same, the person looks the same, they have no major defect of, and I'm talking about like physical defect in the brain or anything like that. If you took a person, say, from uncontacted tribe in the Amazon and traded places with someone who ended up being like a nuclear physicist in England or something along those sorts, if nothing else changed, you could guarantee they're going to have the exact same experiences and be treated the exact same way in society, that they would, in theory, become the same person. Because while genes do determine how we interact with the world around us, it is those experiences that create the motivation to learn the things we want to learn, to study the things we want to study, and that shape us to be the people we want to be. And so, sure, there may be some genetic differences that could potentially affect that. And usually we're talking about, mutations that negatively affect things rather than positively affect things. But most of the time, it's going to be those experiences up to that point that determine who you become. And he went on to say that the only difference between a lazy person and someone that we would call industrious has to do with the schedules of reinforcement and how much reinforcement they receive for those different behaviors that fall into those groups, and not genetics themselves. And so I think we know that there's a genetic component. It makes us who we are physically, and it determines how we see, what we hear. But it is not what causes us to be who we are. And that's probably one of the near future discussions we should have, is what is the self and what makes us who we are scientifically and behavior analytically. But that's going to be another scientific deep dive that we'll do some fun stuff in the middle, just to stop everyone from having to hear us drone on like this. So,
like Myers-Briggs test. Let's do it.
All right, Dr. Steve, cue us out.
All right. Let's just remember, in these days where there's arguments over whether a person should be one way or the other, whether it's genetic or choice, when it's not choice and it's definitely not only genetic, just to try to find and enjoy the little things in life, because you never know what's going to happen next. There's a main road right outside my window here. A semi truck could get a flat tire, swerve, and take me out right as we're ending this episode. But
oh heavens,
regardless, we should still try to enjoy the life and the time we have, even if there's all this shit going on around us. So
I want to play like some little kumbaya music, like during these little talks you do.
You feel free to do it. I had not prepared one there, and I just heard a truck going by, and so
that is what
either way, I would accept it as long as it kept driving and took out Dr. Brad in the next room over. So
you could ceremoniously go out together.
Well, except on the screen, you would literally see him disappear, and then all of a sudden,